Hi there, welcome along to another video here with me, Jenny Kirk, and we're going to be doing a box opening and review today. Some new stuff been coming through, and I've bagged myself one of these and I'm going to take a really good closer look. What we've actually got here is one of the new Class 7 diesel shunter locomotives that's just recently come out from Heljan. And the particular version that I've got here, I've got catalogue number 29031, this is the Class 07, and it says V1. We'll come to that in a little moment. But this is with the tops running number 07010. Now, Heljan have released, I'm just trying to think back now, there's at least two in the BR green. There's also a BR blue one, but just with the pre-tops number. Then there's also two BR blue ones with the tops numbers on. I think one of them is 07005 and this one 07010. Then there's also a couple of industrial liveried ones, one in British Industrial Stand and another one. One of them's white with a camel on and the other one's yellow. So they are actually quite good for fairly generic industrial shunters. And there's also, it should be mentioned, a special commission one that Hattons have commissioned, and that's in Harry Needle Railroad Company livery. But going back to that V1, now the basis of that is that some of these models come with high-level air pipes and some of them don't. So the V1 models are the ones without the high-level air pipes, and the V2 models have those high-level air pipes. So you've got a bit of a range in there. And the high-level air pipes, that's to do with being able to shunt some of the Southern Electric EMU stock at Eastleigh Depot, which is somewhere that these shunters were employed to work. But we've got in here, we've got the locomotive itself in the pretty standard packaging, and then a cardboard outer. And we've also got a little bit of a data sheet here, and this actually caught my eye. It's a list of every single component that's gone into making this. So if we look down this list from number 1 all the way to 137 different unique components went into the making of this model. Some of these there's multiples of, so you can see there 8 times, some of those 4 times. So overall there's going to be in the region of 200 to 300 different parts went into making this. It's quite amazing. It just tickled me a little bit. And I think part of the reason that they've listed all of these is, to some degree, yes, it means if you need any spare parts, then it makes it a little bit easier to identify them. But also, I think, because people have criticised just how expensive some of these models have become, it's a way that the manufacturer can say, hey, now, come on. It's not like models of the 1980s where you just had a top and a bottom and they got stuck together and that was your model and it was a bit naff. These things really are exquisite works of art. In here as well, we've also got a little guide to removal of the body to put a Dcc chip in, and I'm going to go into that in some detail later on. And then we've also got a history of the model. So essentially these were ordered by BR for quite a specific role, and that was to replace the USA dock tanks that had been introduced in the mid-1940s to work the Southampton dock system, and they in turn replaced the London and South Western Railway B4 models, which interestingly enough has just also come out from Dapol. But they were ordered as a like-for-like replacement for the USA dock tanks. In 1962 they ordered 14 of these to replace 14 USA dock tanks. The locomotive itself, the real ones, were powered by a Paxman, Davy Paxman power unit, but in 1972 those V2 versions that we've talked about at the beginning of this video, They were converted to allow shunting of southern region multiple stock around Eastleigh Depot and other railway works, and this involved the fitting of the high-level brake pipes and the cabinets which held the air compressors. The Southampton dock system shut down in 1977, at which point all of these locomotives were declared redundant. However, 7 of the 14 locomotives have survived into preservation. And you may have thought, well, why didn't BR use a Class 8? And well, actually, it was because of the very unique situation of the Southampton dock system, as there was a lot of very tight curves, so much so that I'm not sure that a Class 8 would have coped particularly well with all parts of the system that these had to work over. So whilst BR was becoming quite a good advocate of standardisation, these were a somewhat non-standard class of locomotives, numbering only 14, although Ruston and Hornsby did produce a outwardly quite similar model locomotive for industry. So there are a lot more of these about, locomotives that look very similar to this, but they have a diesel hydraulic transmission rather than the diesel electric transmission that these ones do. And I believe that the Ministry of Defence were a particular big advocate of buying and using the hydraulic version of these. The first impressions getting it out of the box are actually, I mean, the standard of these models is incredible, and also, I mean, it doesn't really come across on the video all that well, the weight. It is actually a very, very heavy model. They must have crammed every single available a bit of space in this with probably something quite high density, something like I think they use tungsten these days. The amount of detail on this is really impressive. That's not to say that it's, I mean, yes, there's probably some fragility to this, but unlike some of the earlier Heljan models, which were quite rightly criticised for having self-destruct detail that just came apart in your hands, and no more so than the Metropolitan Railways Bobo Electric, the one that they produced, the London Underground Metropolitan Railway model, that was notorious for bits falling off it. But so far, I've been handling this before. I had a good look over it when I bought it in the shop, and nothing thus far has parachuted off it, and it's probably famous last words, so keep an eye on the board underneath, and I'm sure you'll point out if you see any bits rain down. Certainly there is a wealth of separately applied details. All of these handrails there in white, they are all separately applied, and they feel like, yeah, they're metal wire. They're not moulded plastic, which we've seen on some other models which can get damaged with handling. These are actually metal, and the ones at the front and the back, where the shunters would have been able to stand on these steps and move around the system fairly safely on these locomotives, grabbing onto these handrails, they stick right out, and they're actually quite a sturdy metal. Now, I said to you before about the Dcc chipping, and I'm going to talk about this now because these metal handrails have sparked a little bit of a debate online and amongst some of the model shops that people have been buying these from that do normally offer a pre-chipping service. These models are DCC ready. They don't come from the manufacturer fitted with a chip, but there is a 6-pin socket in here ready and available to take the chip. Hattons normally offer a DCC chip fitting service, and with this particular model they've said that they cannot or will not fit the DCC chip to it, precisely because they say it's too difficult to dismantle the body. That has been contradicted by a lot of the things I've seen online, and some people are saying that actually it's remarkably easy to get into this. There's 4 screws hidden away deep down inside there, very unobtrusive, but they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have to carefully disconnect some of these handrails to avoid damaging them, and then the body pops off in 3 parts. So you've got the front bonnet, the cab, and the rear bonnet, and that leaves you with all of the mechanism inside exposed to be able to either lubricate, maintain anything, although apparently they do come from the factory pretty well lubricated, so I wouldn't worry too much about that, but also to fit that DCC chip. So even though Hattons aren't offering a service, if you want to get these chipped, and you aren't confident enough to get it done yourself, there are some model shops out there I've seen that people are offering to chip these models. So don't despair if your first port of call was Hatton's and they've said, no, we won't do that. That said, be very careful about the chip that you pick. I've also seen it said that one of the other reasons that perhaps Hatton's aren't offering to chip these is that their own proprietary 6-pin DCC chip is ever so slightly too big to fit inside the cavity inside these. So I've also seen people saying that you need to be very careful with your choice of DCC chip, and one recommendation has been the Gauge Master's own brand one, which is a few millimeters shorter than the Hatton's one, and that makes all the difference. But I don't run on DCC, so we're going to move away from that. I'm just looking here at the detail and the cab glazing. This is an area that Heljan are particularly good at. The thin finesse of the cab sides there. I'm looking at the front there, and it actually looks almost like the cab is prototypical thickness, to the point where I'm almost wondering whether the cab is made out of completely clear glazing material and then has been tempo printed in the body colour over the top to give this illusion of clear glazing. But I'm looking at the edges of that, and I think those actually are inserted glazing pieces, but it is just, oh, this is just incredible. And we've got separately applied windscreen wipers on there, again, incredibly fine. I really don't want to prod them too much because I'm frightened that they look so slender, so scale thickness that, you know, I'm worried that I'm going to break them. So I'm not going to push at them too much. And these big wide windows, these were part of the design to give a really good all-round visibility, because the layout of these was kind of tailored to the work that they were going to do. They wanted a very good all-round visibility because the Southampton's docks system shared a lot of its tracks with where road vehicles were going, so the driver needed to be able to see all round, because you probably had parked vehicles, you had all sorts of stuff knocking about, and they needed to make sure they weren't going to smash things up as they went past. Although if it's anything like the Weymouth tramway, they probably travelled around with a couple of trolley jacks in the cab just to remove any wayward parked vehicles. Moving on to these bonnets, we've got such a wealth of all these different panels. The raised relief there is so well done. I mean, these bonnets could have been quite slab-sided, but they're not. I mean, the detail on that and the rivets and all manner of bits and pieces, and that kind of like witch's hat exhaust pipe on the bonnet, that is so slender, and it's got that slightly conical shape to it, perfectly realised. If we look at the end-on view of this locomotive as well, you can also see that Heljan have very correctly captured this sort of trapezoid shape of the bonnets, and it's very, very slender. Again, it's an area that could have resulted in a complete cock-up with the body sides, either not angled in enough or angled in too much, and Heljan appear to have realised this perfectly. Another area of note, the Wasp Stripes. We've got a really crisp and clear application of these Wasp Stripes, and also the grille on the front where the radiator for the engine would have been drawing in the air. It appears to be a metal grille, and there's a sense behind it that you can actually see the metal framework that would be very evident on the full-size model, and you can actually see it shows up almost as sort of a light dark vertical stripes. And it is so well done. I mean, I'm almost curious as to how they've done that. I suppose there must be a structure behind this grate, and then the grate itself will be a very, very fine etched metal grate that's been fitted in over the top. But it is so well done. I'm just looking at that, and it's rapidly becoming, for me, the model of this year. It's certainly it's in advance of any of the models that I've seen come out this year, even maybe perhaps ahead of the Hatton's Andrew Barclay 040 Shunter that we reviewed recently. I think this model is slightly edging ahead, and it is just such amazing. We live in such interesting times for railway modelling that each model that comes out betters the previous one, and we keep looking at these and thinking, how can they get any better? Well, Heljan have pulled a blinder out of the hat, and with this the last of the 6-wheel diesel shunters to be produced in ready-to-run form, they have managed it to the point where there's just, I can't find any fault with this. If we go below the sole bar, we've got the perfect representation of the mechanical lubricator. And again, that is so fine, and it goes around, it works. We've got like a little metal wheel on there as well, and that is a separate, yeah, it's a separate piece. It's just amazing how well this has all gone together. The detail on the chassis as well. We've got all the relief, the pipe work, the sanding pipes, the rivet details, the correct cutaways, everything is there and everything is perfect. I am blown away by this model. I'm looking very, very closely and I just can't see anything to fault. I'm looking in there. We've got the drive is to the center axle and we've got an exposed gear there. So it actually means that lubrication of the drive chain, you don't even need to dismantle it to get in there. That's very accessible, which is pretty good going. And the wheels themselves, they're kept in place by a keeper plate, and there's 2 screws to remove that, and you're able to take the wheel sets out, and more importantly, get to the wiper contacts that it's picking up power from. Now, if there's any detraction to this model, it has to be the wiper pickups on the back of the wheels. I've found that with mine, if you take the wheels and push them to one side and then the other in turn, you can look down and you can see the wiper pickups. And whilst the middle and the end set of wheels, the wipers remain in contact at all times, I've noticed that on the final axle, the wipers aren't bent out far enough and they lose contact with the wheels very, very easily. When this was running in the shop, it's something that we picked up on, and it can make things like your direction controlled lights in there flicker a little bit. But it's an easy enough fix because the wheels are held in place just by this little keeper plate. You can take them out and you can bend those wipers out carefully. And when I've looked online, I've seen that an awful lot of other people have had a similar problem. So unfortunately, it's the way that they've been assembled, but there is an easy fix for it. Once that's done, it does run particularly smoothly, and we've come to expect a really smooth running mechanism from Heljan. The Class 5 for me has become the benchmark for how well a locomotive should be expected to run, and this is not quite up there with the Class 5, but it's certainly close. And certainly running it 30 minutes in each direction does improve the running qualities. There is a little bit of a waddle with these, and I've seen that we went through 2 of these models in the shop and they all had a pronounced waddle to some degree. And I've seen online people saying that their models waddle as well in all liveries, so it may just be a quirk of the mechanism, but it's not necessarily a big problem. And what you might have found is that the real ones, when running at their full 20 miles per hour top speed, may have had a particularly distinctive gait as well. If we look to the buffers, well, they are incredibly thin metal. I'm looking straight down at these. If I try and hold it like that, if you look straight down in the buffers, those heads are incredibly fine, and they're all independently sprung, although one of the things I found is that some of these buffers are a little bit prone to sticking in the inward position. So if we look there, that one's sort of stuck slightly in. And I don't know whether the spring has been slightly misplaced or whether the shaft in there is a little bit tight. It does spring back out with a little bit of help, but that's something maybe to look out for. Buffer beam detail, again, we've actually got what looks to be a fully workable 3-link coupling on there. So that'll please the 3-link coupling boys, because you don't need to replace this with anything. That is actually fully workable. When we look further down, we can see there's a slot in the buffer beam and the NEM pocket is in there. Now, if I go back to the packaging, we can see it comes with a little detailing pack stuck to the bottom, and we have a choice of the couplings that can just go straight into there. They are cranked, and I've seen a lot of people criticise this because for some reason Heljan have insisted on all their models fitting them with these cranked tension lock couplings, and it makes them ever so slightly the wrong height. Heljan, please, 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 don't bother with the crank, just put straight ones on. They are a fairly easy change for either Bachmann or Hornby plug-in tension lock couplings, and if you use the non-cranked ones, apparently it makes them the perfect height, begging the question why Heljan keep using these cranked ones. We also have some little plugs. You can see in that packaging some yellow plugs, and if you want to use the 3-link coupling, or this is going into a display cabinet and it's going to sit there looking pretty, you can also plug that hole and it just gives you that nice flush prototypical buffer beam front. We've also got a few air pipes, vacuum pipes in there. And then also, special note, these discs with numbers on. I think this is something to do with the workings around the docks. I'd have to look up a little bit on that. And if you're going to use these, it might be worth just having a little look online. There is information out there as to the use of these numbered discs. And they would go on some of these disc holders that you see very neatly picked out as separate metal pieces on the front there and on the back as well. Overall, I have to say that this model has thoroughly impressed me. Its running qualities are really, really nice, and the amount of separately applied detail is just incredible. The tempo printing is excellent. I can't see any sign of any particular problems with that tempo printing. And if we look at the side, we've got the BR double arrow, the number 07010, and then we've also got the TOPS data plate, which whilst I can't see and read it with my naked eyeballs, I've got every faith that is going to be crisp and clear with all the relevant details in place. So I'm going to give this model, I'm going to give it a 9.9 out of 10, because I think it's going to have to drop that 0.1 because of 3 things, and these are only very, very minor. One is the buffer heads that can get stuck in, but that's an easy fix. Another is the pickup wipers on one of the wheels need to be reset, but again, that's an easy enough fix. And finally, the fact that Heljan shipped these with cranked couplings, which makes the couplings the wrong height, but again, an easy enough fix. I think that this model may well go down as being the model of this year. It's certainly been eagerly awaited, and that is borne out by the fact that model shops are selling out of these very, very quickly. Indeed, when I went to my local model shop and picked up mine, it was interesting that he'd already sold out of both of the BR green ones and also the TOPS blue with the high-level air pipes, 07005 was also sold out, and also the BR blue one with the pre-TOPS number was also sold out, but he did have the 2 industrial liveries as well. So if you want to pick up one of these Class 7s, don't dilly-dally, they are selling really, really fast, and deservedly so. Well, I hope that's been informative to you. Don't forget to like this video and share it too. And that's really important. Let other people who you think might be interested know if you've enjoyed this. But thanks again for watching. This is me, Jenny Kirk, saying until next time, you take very good care of yourself. And bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Mark Anthony and Michael Churchwood. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.